Hello.
Hello, everybody. Back
We are
again
back.
after a short break. What did you actually
Yes.
do last Friday? What was your excuse?
My excuse was
Yeah, you had.
unfortunately, my relatives have birthday from time to time. There's a repetitive pattern I figured after a
Yes.
few years. And therefore, I was unfortunately attending a birthday party. But
Well,
I hope you
you
excuse
are
me.
you are excused. You are excused. Good to see you again, Stephen. And
Good to see you.
so the usual thing we do in the initial part of this little thing that we call bUnit dev sessions is that we look at what has happened in the last, well, I guess 14 days now of
Yeah.
bUnit community stuff, interactions, questions, comments, problems, issues. So do you want to, because you've been very active in that part, I have watched from the sidelines. Do you want to share your screen and
Yes.
take us through
Let
what's going
me
on?
find the share button.
Yes.
If I do find this after 2 weeks, so
I
let's go.
believe, Stephen.
I also believe in me from time to
Yeah.
time. So we are, let me do this here. Exactly. So we had, I'm thinking, so this one and here there was only the closed one because here you can see June 5th, that's a while ago. And if you check the closed one, we had last week. Oh no, we had even two. Yeah. So sorry. Now it took me a while.
Hmm.
Maybe if folks remember 2 weeks ago where we made the same thing, we
Hmm.
went through this issue with a user reported that the browser file now, for some apparent reason, bubbles up some exceptions, which it didn't in an earlier version of bUnit. And the reason was, straightforward. We basically decided let's bubble everything up. Whatever comes
Mm.
from our own upload files, it doesn't matter what goes wrong in there. We just bubble up to the user. And there's a very, very uncertain bit in the code. And this is the one, again, this was an excellent bug report. I just have to, we have to frame that because it was so easy to go through all the stuff. If you have an excellent bug report, it makes your life so much easier.
Yeah. Again,
Anyhow,
shout out to, I can't remember the name. Chris.
Chris
I think we talked about that
from
last time,
Munich.
actually, didn't we?
Exactly. And the
Yes.
thing was like, hey, as our conclusion or our homework, the question was, do we really want to have our own, we call it bUnit browser file? Or is there any way of, just utilizing the one Blazor provides? Because then we can come around these limitations and this weird exception.
Yes,
Because
that's
also
right.
what we
We had that whole
discussed
discussion.
last
Yeah.
exactly last time what we discussed is, hey, basically what we're doing is a bit, I wouldn't say the slippery slope, but we are just bubbling up our own exceptions and swallow everything. You still can get those exceptions if you go to the renderer.untitled exceptions. They're still there. We just don't bubble them up actively. So, and that was the question: like, are we on the right track, or does it make more sense to use the Blazor browser files, the unit one? And I checked a few things, and all in all, for folks who are interested, it's this issue 1521. It doesn't make much sense because it's way harder for users, or even for us, it's almost impossible to set things up. And it doesn't make much sense. We have to
Yeah.
do so much work. Everything is internal. I'm not sure if you can even go there.
No, yeah, that was the whole thing, right? There was some things that could be public, but the Blazor team decided to make internal. And that just limits us unless we want to resort to reflection, which we do not want to do unless there's a good reason to do so. We do that
Yes.
in some parts of bUnit, but this doesn't seem like a place where it's worth
Plus,
the
it's
extra
also
problems that follows with that.
this browser file delivered from Blazor is also very tightly coupled to the input file component, which makes it so much more harder for us to come around. And let's argue, even if there is a chance, it's just way more easier, or it's way easier for the user just to basically refactor the stuff into a service and mock that service inside the component. This is way easier, and this can live in your code base. It's pretty straightforward to do so. So we decided it's a documentation issue because we never really express that that has limitations. Now those limitations are documented, and that's one thing.
Yeah, makes sense. Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that was closed. I think there was a follow-up issue with the documentation where it didn't. There was some old pipeline thing that still hung around. I don't think I told you this online, but if you go into our actions, so we don't. If folks have a look here, we don't actually have the verification action anymore. We have it's been renamed and changed to CI, and then we have docs deploy, prepare, release, and we have like the other ones are there anyway. But somehow the verification pipeline ran still once in a while, or was picked up by GitHub as checks that needed to be passed before it would allow us to merge in. So what I did is, you can see it says disabled in sort of small gray letters on the left there. I went in and just marked it as disabled, so I think that's, I guess, solves the problem, because it shouldn't really be running anymore, and I don't know really why it still shows up once in a while. Because it's the YAML file, workflow YAML file isn't there anymore in any of our branches, as far as I can tell. So yeah. Anyway.
Exactly. Maybe in very old ones, so we have these archive thingies. I'm not sure if maybe
but still,
there is one hanging around, but for sure we run those things from main, and on main there's nothing. So GitHub should understand.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's probably some finer details of GitHub actions I'm missing, but it's disabling the thing that should solve.
And now it's working, seemingly, and I like that. Okay, I would go to the next one.
Yes.
We have 3 in total. Let's go to, this was a very, very simple one. A user used the supply from query parameter and didn't work for him. And the sole reason was because we didn't introduce it in this version. So just simply by upgrading the package, it was done.
Okay.
The whole ticket was closed. So nothing for us to do. And then we have,
I'm just thinking back. Could we have made it more obvious for that user? Because the thing that he was trying to use was in .NET 8, I guess, or is it .NET 9?
Yes.
.NET 8. Okay, so if he had an older version, was that not targeting .NET 8? Probably not. If you go, if you go to NuGet and find bUnit and find the version he has, because I think he should have probably.
I can almost assure you that this version was supporting .NET 8, because maybe it's also this is
if you go to there was 25, I think he said, right? It was 25.
Yeah, he had 25. That is true. Yeah. 10 months ago, well, that could target.
And then you go to frameworks.
You go to the frameworks.
Oh well, you have to use bUnit.core maybe. Switch to bUnit core, because this is just this is like a what's the word here? Web, yeah.
Yeah. So this is .NET 8. Well, just because we
it's a feature we added.
Yeah, exactly, later, because we had the bug report from a user, because they changed the way these supply from query parameters work.
That's true.
This whole fuss around.
So there wasn't really a way for him to detect that it's
the only chance he would have is just to go to all of our release notes. It is listed there, but I mean, difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a nice, quick one. I appreciate that, but exactly. I don't think we want to do anything else on top.
No, it's solved. It's solved.
Yeah.
And then we have the last one, where it also took me a while to understand really what the user wants to do. He has a component map which references itself in the code. So you get, like if you have a dialog and stuff, you want to open and close a dialog. That would be the most simple version of what he's trying to achieve here. And the thing is that this map component has a lot of setup, and he wants to basically stub that thing out. And obviously that doesn't really work to the extent of he cannot use this code then anymore.
No. So I think we also had that documented. I'm fairly certain, because that's one downfall with stubs, is that they don't allow you to create that reference, because they actually, it's duck typing. We don't create a
Exactly.
type derived from map. We, in this particular case, we just say, well, if you find a component of type map, just instantiate something which is a type called stop of map. But that is not a map. It's a type that
It's just
in
your
the,
everyday component.
Blazor actually allows quite loose typing unless you do the specific thing which it does, which is the add ref. So I guess what we could have done was to make that invalid cast. Well, no, that's not coming from us. I guess maybe we could intercept that at some stage and say, okay, so we see this message, and then amend or add to that error message saying, so if you're trying to do this and you have this scenario, then you probably want to do use MOQ of mock your map, or use any substitute, use a mocking framework, because that will actually do the right thing.
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
So,
you were probably getting
exactly.
in that direction anyway.
Yes, exactly. So he tried also similar things. He wants to achieve this to some extent with interfaces, and you could probably do this somewhat, but it's not so easy. And I try to understand what's.
Yeah, typically, actually, Blazor components, if they inherit from component base, which most components do, unless you're doing something really advanced, they're actually quite mockable. So you can just mock them straight out. Just say, I want to create a mock of my map type, and the mock will by default, if you're using MOQ or in substitute, will by default override all virtual methods, which is coincidentally all the lifecycle methods, which actually makes the component do things. So it's only if you have specific initializers or fields and properties in your constructor, for example, it can't override that. But so typically, even components, you don't have to try resort to interfaces. They will be quite mockable. Go ahead.
The only thing is because he's using a call. It depends really if that component basically relies on some initial, init logic inside on parameter set or initialized async and whatnot. It might fail inside here just because we mock that part. So it's a bit, even as an example, I told him I will look through and I didn't. That's really on me. What I also offered is you could in theory also create a fake. We are allowing you to create fakes. It really depends what you need. Exactly. The only downside is that you have to open your component to a degree you wouldn't normally. So if your production logic doesn't need virtual methods, that's not great. As always, that's just a very pragmatic choice. You don't have to do this. You can also refactor it out into services. There are a lot of options. And exactly that he came up with, what he wants to achieve might not be possible because Blazor is creating instances. There are classes. It's not like an interface. So it's not as trivial
you can't do an
as
interface.
it might look on the outside. Exactly. But I will look through his example. Maybe I can answer him then again. Because I'm not sure what his real method does. And maybe, it's very easy just to move the logic from that method into its own service. And then it's super trivial to use the component at least.
Yeah, you can post a link to the stream also, or say, hey, we discussed it here. So one thing I would say is because it seems like he owns the map component. It's something he built himself, right? So I would avoid trying to mock out stuff or replace things you own yourself. So obviously, if you take in general testing terms, if you take a more mockist approach to testing where you want to test things in isolation, I'm much more leaning towards the classic school or the Chicago school of testing, where you don't mock things out unless they are sort of at the edge. So his map, I'm guessing it might be using a bunch of JavaScript to draw a Google map or OpenStreetMap or whatever. I would instead that would be the edge where I say, I want to mock there. I want to replace my JavaScript interrupt calls, or I want to have a specific service that deals with all that stuff. And I want to be able to replace that during testing and then just use the map component directly. But other than that, I would start by looking at if it's possible just to use MOQ to mock his component by saying mock off and then the map component directly and see if it doesn't do the thing he needs it to do. Obviously, if he's doing stuff in the method he's trying to sort of deal with in the component itself, if that does things that depends on things like JavaScript or other things that is actually causing the problem, then I would try to go one layer deeper and just not mock the map component, but just deal with whatever external stuff is getting called from the map component itself and make that testable. Anyway, interesting stuff.
Yes. I just for myself, or just add like that might make it easier. So I have this bubble up here.
I can just I can chat it at you otherwise, but it's fine. Yeah.
I know. My personal
yeah.
to-do list.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess that as far as I can, we have some. I mean, this is just bunch some versions. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. Dependencies.
I guess these typical dependencies. I'm not sure if we have to go through right now. I guess
no.
I should.
I think that's an off-stream problem. Also, there's been a bunch of security issues in some packages recently. Some are used by bUnit as well. So yeah, we probably need to get around to pushing out a new version that takes dependency on.
No, we did this
on those. Okay, I just opened bUnit, but that might have been.
We never rebased V2, so you get that probably on V2. Am I right?
Yeah, probably. Yes, correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh wait, okay. No, not that I'm telling something. We just cross-check because I'm pretty certain we did this, but this version should be even. One of the versions we fixed is 130 or 131. Let me just quickly. I didn't even write this inside.
Oh, it's fine. That's fine. People can always, because we're not locked to a specific version, so you can always just upgrade locally if you're using bUnit. You're not stuck with the patch version level that we're using. You can always move ahead if it's the ASP.NET,
which is also the recommendation.
Yes. Anyway, exactly. Okay. Now I have been. So last time we are working on a new way to manage and deal with in V2 with the DOM nodes that we get from AngleSharp. So let's see. I can probably actually find. I think we had a to-do list.
Yes, I have it open for you.
Yeah. Well, I can if you want to do other things. Anyway. Yeah, let me go to GitHub as well, so I can always also see it myself. By the way, my kids might show up anytime now and want to be let in to the house, so we might get interrupted for a brief moment here. Wait, where did we?
It's on the
smarter renderer.
feature V2 smarter rendering pull request.
All right. Let me steal the screen so I can follow along what I'm saying. Yeah. So, we were trying to break down what can actually happen during a life cycle, but to take it back to the basis, some of the things we don't do right now in bUnit V1 is that each rendered component that gets returned to you have its own set of DOM nodes. AngleSharp nodes would represent so even though they are technically maybe a subtree of a parent rendered component, the nodes themselves are not shared. So that gives us a sort of a weird disconnect. So if you don't see changes in both places, for example, and you can't say are these two the same. You can't say equals between nodes you find in one part of the component tree and a node in the other part of the component tree, even though they are the same. They're not the same because it's not the same instance. So that's one thing we want to deal with. Another thing is that we wanted to be able to we want to be able to go from DOM nodes and say what component created this node. So a node can be text, or it could be an HTML element or something like that. And a third thing, which I haven't found a solution for yet, but I think we might be getting closer to, is the patching of a DOM. Instead of basically on every render, we take all the DOM nodes we have and all the markup and throw it away, and then we create the markup again, and then from the markup we pass that into AngularSharp, which spits out a full DOM tree for us. And while that works, it's unnecessary work. And you also, for example, if you're in your C# code, and I think we have an example down here, if you go and find a button, and this is the first thing. We want to have the same reference, even though you're searching at different levels. But also after a render, we want the element that we found here, and I think that probably isn't called element anymore. It's probably called button in this particular case. We want the button to still, after we click it, we don't want to have to requery to find the button again. Let me go and update this example so it actually makes sense. So, good friends at GitHub, can't we expand this box by default? Button. So we have I guess this is button inner text. I guess, yes, something like this. That makes sense. So we want to make sure that if you go and click the button, which is this guy up here, the button element from root, its inner text will then reflect the change automatically without us having to actually go and say find again. So in V1, we actually support this through some magic where we don't return real I elements from AngularSharp. We just return wrappers around that. And whenever you issue a query, we in the wrapper, we return to you the I element, which is wrapped. We actually store the query you did. And after each time we render, we go and reissue that query and update it's sort of an adapter that grabs the real button element return. So we can just go and replace it. And so to the end user, it looks like it's still pointing at the same element, but it's not pointing at the same element instance. We change the instance, and our wrapper just points to a different element after that. And it's causing us some pain to have to keep those wrappers around. And it also doesn't work consistently. For example, if you go and find multiple elements using find all, you get a list. And by default, it doesn't do that. And also, it doesn't really, in terms of referencing, it doesn't necessarily work the way you expect it to all the time. So there's some weird edge cases. And for the most part, since we're not getting many questions related to it, it probably kind of works well enough so people don't get bit by it. I was getting the whole reason why I did all of that work initially of creating the wrappers and all of that was because people were asking a bunch of questions like, why I'm doing this, clicking, and then the text doesn't change, and you have to go and search again after you click, right? Because it's a new element, and there weren't, and it was. I got so many questions initially about that, so that's why we ended up like we did. Now, AngularSharp has a whole bunch of hooks that allows us to do stuff. So the first thing is obviously we want to be able to split out. So currently in V1 we have a full string after we've done rendering a render cycle, and that full string represents the full markup from the root component all the way down. And because of the way the render works in Blazor, we know whenever we get to a new component, so that we know this markup, this part of the markup belongs to this component. However, when you just pass in the full string to AngularSharp and AngularSharp's HTML parser and say, give me a DOM node from this, you don't have enough hooks to be able to split up the nodes in node lists and in node list per component, so that you can go into a specific component and just view the subtree of the markup that the component created. So I tried a bunch of things, and I've been talking to the creator of AngleSharp, Florian, multiple occasions, trying to figure out a way to do this, and it really doesn't include hooks for us to do it. So then I thought, well, for V2, we can have some break-in changes. One of the break-in changes could, in theory, be that we don't actually generate the raw markup string from the render tree anymore, but we instead just build up an AngleSharp DOM tree based on that. And then if people just want to look at the raw markup, then AngleSharp has some features both to render out the markup based on what was passed in again. So you basically can go from AngleSharp DOM tree to string, and you can choose, do I want a pretty version, which is formatted quite well, or do I just want something that reflects the raw string that was originally passed into me? And I think that is going to be a much better option for us, because when we are walking through the render tree, we can ask AngleSharp to build out itself, but we can also capture the nodes that are getting built during rendering of a specific component and say, besides storing them in the sort of the unified grand DOM that is owned by the root components, we can also take out the individual nodes that were generated during or created during the rendering of the individual component and store them in a separate list. Just because it's just object references, we just have a copy of them over here as well. And that allows us to have, subtrees that are sort of sliced out and exist individual for the components. So with that in mind, let me show you what I did. So this is how it looks right now. And let me just refactor.
Just a small greeting from Blazer Mr. Magoo. In XML, we only accept JSON. I'm sorry, so I do not understand. I cannot parse that greeting. I'm just kidding.
Hey, speak for yourself, man. No, it's always good to have you, Blazer, Mr. Magoo. You are one of our most recurring persons that show up here. So what I did was that I just created a new XUnit test project, just because it's so easy to quickly, instead of having a console application, if I just want to do experiments, I usually just create a test project because it makes it easy to run individual, small bits of code. Now, and then I started just very well. I don't know if it makes sense to take you through. Well, why not? We can just check out this.
Aww,
so you can see
thanks for the JSON.
Nice. So some of the things that are new in the latest version of AngleSharp. No, I'm going to try to take you through my thinking and how I got there. Right. So this is the first commit where I just have a few things. So basically, AngleSharp, you have to set up a configuration. You add so it has its own sort of dependency injection system. AngleSharp, you configure your HTML parser. And one thing that is new since the last time we really deep dive. Let me know if the font sizes are okay. By the way, folks, if it's too small, let me know. Anyway, I can probably bump it to 150. So make sure everybody can follow now.
That's good.
Yeah. So here we configure our parser, and we say, is existing custom elements everywhere? And that was a thing so it's not within spec. But the thing is, with bUnit, people will not render the full application with a header and body and HTML tags and doc type and all that jazz, right? Sometimes people will just render a single component that might even just have half of a legal tag, right? It might not actually have the closing tag because it's not typical, but it's certainly a possibility, right? Sometimes it's just text, right? So, and there can also be custom elements in there where they not exist. Like we can also have examples where you have a table row or something that isn't actually, because you have a component that just represents the table row, and it's not being it would always in production be used in the context of a component that represents a table probably, or but you might not have that when you're creating tests. So basically you can set some of these options here, which which you don't have in the earlier versions of AngularSharp. This one just allows custom elements anywhere, also outside of the body. Is embedded, gets a set if so. I was looking at, if we go back to, there we go, AngularSharp. I think want to go to the website and documentation and configuration. Where was that?
Yeah, it's embedded.
Is embedded. So if we zoom in, so everybody can, is embedded options allows you to use HTML parser in with the content being assumed to be embedded in a valid HTML document already. This is used to determine if the doc type is needed. In embedded mode, doc type can be missing without entering the quirks mode. So I don't know if you know what quirks mode is, but that's basically back from the old 2000s area, maybe before 2010. If you didn't use a doc type, the browser would go into quirks mode, which meant it would treat. It was a bit more, I don't want to say random, because it was deterministic, but the browser would treat elements differently than. So if you didn't have a doc type, it would just try, like HTML browsers or browsers have always been very insistent on at least trying to render something, even if the markup is completely legal. And in quirks mode, it behaved differently from normal mode. Now, the reason why I think we should enable this is that this may mean that we can just render a TD because actually if you go without having some of these options, and I haven't tested this, so this is just me experimenting, but I remember back in V1 and bUnit, we actually try to go and detect, and if the first tag we see in a string we try to pass, if that starts with TD and you don't have then we automatically go and manually create a table element that sits around our table body. Well, probably table row, then table body, just to make sure that we have the right context. Otherwise, AngularSharp wouldn't pass them. It wouldn't actually create the element. It would just say, this is not legal, so I'm not going to spit it out. So I think setting this, that's my theory, enables us to skip some of those edge cases, but we will see when we get a bit further. So then we have is keeping source reference. We want to set that is preserve attribute names. So that means that if you do something like if you have weird casing, normally AngularSharp, according to the HTML spec, so AngularSharp is not doing anything wrong, but normally AngularSharp will just lowercase attributes because that's the default, and attributes are not case sensitive. But again, our users might be writing attributes in a different case, and they will look at the markup that they get out of rendering and see that it doesn't look like what they have in their code. So that's going to be a disconnect between the two, and that might cause problems. So I think that's a new one we didn't have before, preserve attribute names. And then there's this callback on created, which was my first attempt at saying, okay, this callback gets called every time an element is created, and you get the position in the text. So the thing is, though, the position you get is based on line numbers and there's basically let me show you. Yeah, come on.
Line and column, or
there's column position index. Now the problem is we can only really use index, and because we just have zero-based index when we render when we build the raw text string representing markup, we can note out indexes for every time a new component starts and ends, so we know the start and end indices, and that was sort of the approach we had taken in the previous streams, trying to do that. But I couldn't write code that would allow me to say, okay, I have component 2 content here, and I just want this part to be part of the DOM nodes that are stored in component 2. I was trying various you can see here, sort of trying to figure it out. So the problem is, and then I had some node list slice and wanted to sort of try to go in and search through the full DOM tree and find the nodes that lie in there. The problem is for when we have this keep source references set to true, elements have a source reference property on them that has the positioning as well, and we thus know, but we know that the start position of an element. We don't know where the element ends. We don't know the length of attributes, and unfortunately, text nodes like this, they don't have that source information. So I wouldn't be able to go and pick it out either. And it would be something like trying to say, okay, so how much string does it actually take before we get to the text? And then I can subtract that from the length and all of that. It became, it didn't seem like a viable approach.
But this onCreated will be called 4 times in your example. For the diff, for the p world, for the p component, and the span.
And span, yes. And but again, if I want to pull this out, that turned out to be quite hard to figure out where does this start and end, and then be able to find the child node. And sometimes a text node would be, So anyway, I sort of scrapped that whole approach and said, okay, so well, instead of doing that, I actually went into, let me see, ASP.NET Core, boom, boom, here. So I booted up the latest version of the ASP.NET Core repo and found the WebAssembly renderer, which is, I think, the closest thing we're going to get to what we actually want to do, because the WebAssembly renderer will work directly in C#, and it doesn't need to use a signal. I can just do it can just update the DOM directly using JavaScript. And so I looked at what it's doing. It's actually quite simple. You can see there's not a lot of things going up here on the update display intake. There's a bunch of things around scheduling. So that's, again, I think in terms of dealing with some of the issues we've had also with race conditions between input coming from the user and the render being active, when I just read the comments here, they have some similar issues basically here they have to deal with, and because they're not going over signal connection that serializes things, I think we might find some inspiration in their WebAssembly call queue, and they have a specific dispatcher. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So another thing, but this WebAssembly render inherits from WebRender, which is this type, and the renderer. That's it uses, well, all the rendering happens down in the JavaScript, and that's sort of some of the JavaScript that we tried to at some point convert to C#, which is probably doable, but again, overkill, I think. Now,
good afternoon, by the way. I just wanted to.
Good afternoon.
I guess
that's Danish for yes, yeah. That is Danish for that.
Yeah.
So what I did instead was I went into let's see, that would be
exactly. So this is very close to German.
Yeah. Let's see. I can't remember. But
it's somewhat also English. I mean, there's after Mittag, and Mittag is German. So yeah.
HTML writing, something along those lines. I'm trying to remember where it actually does its thing.
Was it called HTML render raw?
Yeah, I can't remember. Anyway, I have it here as well, and I actually checked out this commit. So what I did was I went and took the original code from. Sorry for all jumping around. I'm trying to find my place. Here we go. It's because it's nested. So by default, the bUnit, I just call it bUnit render, but this is basically the WebAssembly render combined with the web render, which it inherits from. So I just created a new one just to have a clean slate. It doesn't do all the stuff that we needed to do, but for prototype, proof of concept, it does what it needs to do. So it sets up it sets up the config for AngularSharp, and it creates a new context, which is, I think, kind of akin to opening up a new browser window, right? So that's at least how I see it. And we pull the HTML parser out, which is what we declared here. We pull that out and store that. Then we have some dispose, we have some render component where we just instantiate it, and render root component, and we assign. So basically in AngularSharp, you can go and say open async, which isn't really async in this particular case because we just pass in the empty string. We want to create our root document that is going to be attached to the root components that we would just ask to render, right? So we want to have at the root level, we want to have a single document we can add stuff to. And then here in update display async, we just go and pull out the body, and we call write component HTML, which is coming from our friend over here, which is the again a partial class. So it's that's how Microsoft is also structuring it. It's called HTML writing. I should be able to find it over here in the other code base. Doesn't matter. Anyway, normally here, and this is actually before I converted it over to write directly to AngularSharp. You can see here when we call write component HTML, it takes a text writer, which is what you normally write into. You just write in the raw string. And sorry, hang on, somebody's at the door. 1 second.
So, can I take over the screen? No. I do not have your branch. So, interesting. I'm just looking at your camera right now, and it zoomed on your Quake. So if you're back, that is interesting. It zooms even further. I like that. That's very interesting. I cannot make it big. Oh, yeah, you're back. Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Yeah,
so
sorry
you have this you have this beautiful feature of your camera, your AI camera, and because at the back you have your Quake picture, and there was a reflection of you, and it zoomed really, really hard into the Quake picture.
It really wanted to see me.
You.
Yeah. Oh, really nice.
That was really nice. I didn't expect that. Those small glances of movement was enough for the camera to zoom in.
Okay. Cool. All right, I didn't know. So good thing I didn't start beating my kid or something. It would have been on stream. All right, awesome. So basically, this is the standard code that comes out of if you go and find this in Microsoft's land, you can see I've commented out a few things which we don't need. This is for the static rendering on Blazor stuff. So this is just spitting out HTML. It's not because that's sort of the closest thing to what we do. We just generate markup, and it's not stateful in a sense that it's like with Blazor server. So here you're just going through, getting out the frames and all that, and you're passing around the output, which is our text writer. That is sort of the thing that gets carried around through all the render child component, render frames, render core, where we try to check which type of element or which type of thing in the render tree do we have? Do we have an element? Do we have attribute? Do we have text? Do we have markup? A component? Do we have a region? Element reference capture, component reference capture, named event, which is a new thing also in .NET 8 for the Blazor static server side rendering, which is not the live one, but and the only named event that is right now, by the way, is the onSubmit event, because they want you to be able to do the submit forms. So, and you can see here, going, for example, render element, you start by writing a, less than bracket, then the element name, and then you try to figure out what attributes do I need to add to it, render attributes, maybe add some, if it's a, string option, and it's the first one, and it's selected. And there's actually good code documentation here that explains what you're doing.
There's covered, like, you're the first person I've seen using pattern matching that way. Yeah, I guess it's a very nice way to ensure. So this is very much on the top of your file.
You mean this one? Yeah,
exactly. To ensure that document body is.
You could also add, and I also do something like this sometimes. This document body is supposed to be an HTML
something.
element. So that's the same thing. So the reason why it's complaining here is because this actually takes the text writer right now, because we haven't moved forward in my history of my experiment here. But yeah, so this is shorthand for this. Basically says, is the element null? Not null. This is basically a not null check,
Yeah.
right? So you could also
You
write,
also
the
write
body
this object,
is
but then
not null.
it is,
Yeah.
or like,
Not.
it also
Yeah.
works.
Well,
It's not finite number
if you
exception.
can
That's
hit
true.
the right
I know
keys, you
that.
could also do this, right? So actually, probably not. Anyway, yeah, this is sort of an expression bodied, and I guess if you wanted to do extra checks, you can say, well, if I have like, I don't know, base UL colon.
It's just has to be constant inside.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit weird looking, but it works. So yeah. Anyway, yes. So as you can basically see, what we're doing here is we're just using the text output. We're just adding chars and strings to the element. Going further down, here you're writing the end of the. So if you have something like a div, and then this is the closing bit, then now, depending on whether or not it's a select element, we do extra stuff. If it's a captured value attribute, we do other things. If it's a text array, we have to encode the content in the body. If it's, and so on and so forth. If it's, and that's element name field, I commented that out because it's a property that's not accessible to us. But I think element name should do the same. We'll see. Again, edge cases I haven't tested for yet. So if it's a script tag we're actually rendering out, we want to render that out correctly. Again, and then you call render children. So an element can have children. So you want to render that out. And then at the end, you decide, okay, is this element a self-closing element or not? So if it's not a self-closing element, you might have something like, div, some content, and then you have to close it again, right? So that's what's going on down here. And then it can also be a self-closing thing.
Doing this all the time?
Second?
Are we doing this all the time for every element? Because there are some elements which are which
so
do
that's
not need any closing tag. I'm just interested. Are we having bugs?
No. This is there is this else section here because we start up here if there is remaining elements inside the subtree of the element we are in, or it's a text area, we go in here. Otherwise, we come in here and we ask, well, is this a self-closing element? And there is a handy list up here with all the tags that are self-closing. And if it is that, we just close it like that. Otherwise, we close the element. We then add the closing, the normal closing tag. So all of that is sort of built into the standard renderer, and there's multiple things more here with script. And if you find render attribute is also a whole thing. It's quite complex as well because there's certain types of escaping you have to do, and then you can. So a bunch of things going on. Now,
Scott, I like that icon. I do not know how you did this, but I like it. Given that is your Twitch. Did you edit those icons? Because I like them.
Yeah. No, in Switch you can get all sorts of different custom icons. Yeah. I think he's referring to the guy with the thumb up.
Exactly, with the closed eyes. Yeah, I know it's. Yeah, sorry, it's not an icon. Yeah. Easy to spot the people who are not Twitch streamers and they use all the wrong words.
Well, Steven, you are a Twitch streamer. You just
we
just do it through what's it called, StreamYard, so we don't actually see all the niceties here.
I'm just a boomer. That's all.
Oh, don't say it. Anyway, so if we go and have a look at the test, so actually all of this kind of worked. I hadn't completed that, but then I, said, well, okay, let's render directly to angle sharp instead. So you can sort of see if we take this file, I just select it here and compare it to the previous one. And can we do something to zoom in here? Well, I think I figured that out last time.
The classic Windows or Control Shift plus?
No, it's actually Control equal for some reason.
Uh-huh.
Sure. And can I pop out this guy? Even better. Here we go. So now we're just comparing those two commits. You can see, so instead of taking a text writer in, we're taking an I element, and that is basically being passed around the I element instead of the text writer. And where things start become interesting, so up with the initial methods, we don't really change anything. We also deleted all of the is it self-closing tag because AngularSharp knows that. So we don't need to track that for it, right? So if we get down here in the first render call, there's two things we had to change down here. Instead of using the HTML encoder encode and passing that to the text writer output with the content, we just say output.append child, and then could have put into 2 lines to make it more easy, but here we have output. Output is our I element now, and it has something called an owner, which is the document. So again, if you go into a browser, I'm not in a browser, so I can't demo that. So AngularSharp actually just follows the API. So if you go to console here and say document.create text node, you can see the API is just the same, right? So this is basically what we're doing here, and I need to zoom in so you guys can see. But this is basically what we're doing here is that we are, where did I go? We just say output, which is an element somewhere in our DOM tree. Then we say owner. I want to go to the owner, which is the document. It can be null. It's not in this particular case, so I can just say that and say create text node and pass in the text. And that's sort of what we need to do here. If we have markup, and that's what I think your question was before, if we have markup content can be multiple elements and text or anything that Blazor decided that all of this, there's no extra logic in here that Blazor needs to deal with. You don't have any add something reference to variables or anything. It's just a bunch of markup sitting next to each other in your component. So it'll just bunch all of that together as a markup content. So here we have to do a little bit of extra work because we want to because that can contain not just text, but also elements. So we have the HTML browser here from, where did my Zoom go? Zoom doesn't work here. I hope it's big enough, but we have HTML parser, which is AngularSharp's parser. And we can say parse fragment because it is going to be a fragment of a full page. We pass that in. And the output here, our I element, is our context for the parser. So, for example, if this was contained a TD element and our current element, that is the thing that we are rendering stuff into or building stuff into, is a table row, then giving it the table row element allows the parser to treat the incoming content correctly and build the right elements out of that. So once we've done that, we get a set of nodes out, and we can just loop through them and add them append child for each node. And we have to do a for each for here, and I can't do for each because when we go and append the node from this nodes list to the output to the parent, then it gets removed from the nodes list, so you can't iterate over it. So it's a bit, it's it has something's going on. It's maybe you actually want to. I'm just thinking that I gets moved ahead every time, and yeah, that's something with the node list you get back here. Anyway, so that was one example where we had to change a few things. Then you have, for example, render element, and here we just call render element, and you just pass the output down, and now output is an I element. And you can see the simple change here. Well, instead of starting to write a starting tag, an element, we just go again and say output owner, create an element, give it an element name. And AngularSharp will do the right thing in terms of if it's self-closing or not. And then you can append the output. Well, at least I assume it will, but probably fine either way. Then you append the created element to the parent. And if you need to set a selected attribute, for example, because it's according to the docs here, you just set selected, and you don't need to write closing elements. If you have some specific, if you're wanting to set the text content, and I actually haven't tested this, so it might be something different we need to do here for a text array. But if it's a text array, for example, you pass in the captured value attribute, which is the value of, if it's another form field, if it's like an input field, you set the value attribute instead. So there's some edge cases here. Writing, you don't need to write the end of the element because that's handled by angle sharp. Similarly in here, you don't need all of that. And that's why we can also take away all the self-closing things, because it's, if it's according to specification, angle sharp should do that right. Again, script child, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I deleted some of those things. If we want to render an attribute, there's a few things we had to change, but mostly we don't have to write space ourselves. We can just say set an attribute with this name if it's a flag attribute, or if it's not a flag attribute, we just write the attribute name and the value. So actually, surprisingly enough, this code became more simple than it was before, because angle sharp is doing some of the heavy lifting. Now, going back here, so after basically doing that, there was a bunch of things I refactored to make it more. So if you go up here, I moved things around. Now, let's go into. Go ahead, just interrupt me.
Yeah, exactly. So what we are doing here differently, and maybe you can shed some light on how it will work or how it should work, is in V1 or even in V2, if we deduct the changes you're doing. So every component has its own markup. You know exactly where it starts, you don't know where it ends. And this is also what we did basically the last sessions, that because you know exactly where your cursor is, you know where it ends, you know that slice is your subcomponent. And now if you have your root component and it has a lot of children, you call that render. And that will, beautifully bug-free create your, your parent nodes with all the nodes as children. How can you decide now which node, or where does a component begin and where does a component end? Given that you want to, for example, have markup for one of the child components.
Exactly. So that was something, and I didn't want to keep showing you the diffs because it's easier to just see it in code, because that was the next thing. That was the thing I did after that. Let me go in here and just amend this. Now, so this is the temporary hard-coded renderer. I changed a few things in here. We still capture the services. We still create an angle sharp configuration, and we have a shared angle sharp context that is going to be shared throughout the full renderer lifecycle. And we dispose of that after we're done. Now, for render components, async, which is looking very much like they normally do in bUnit world, we now return a bUnit root component state. So again, inheriting from component state. It's async, could probably not be async, but still that's how it is. And just, again, lots of things that doesn't work in the full version of bUnit, but we instantiate the component, we render the root component, and then we have a render completed task here that we await. And once that's done, we can say get root component state, and we return that. Now, create component state is the method I've overridden, and that allows us to control the component state types. So similar to what we've done in V2 in the other branch. So here we basically say if the parent component is a bUnit component state, or rather probably just want to say, no, this should be fine, parent component state. We just new up a new bUnit component state that takes into parent. If it's not, if it's null, which I guess is the other option, then we use angle sharp context to, and you kind of have to do this open async. There's no sync version of it. But basically, it returns an I document, which is the root document we want for root level, and we just say create a empty document, basically, right? So what it will create for us is a HTML tag, a head tag, and a body tag, but there's nothing in the body, nothing in the head. And I just have a assertion here that it should always complete immediately, this particular document create task. And then we have create a bUnit root component. In update display incheck, slightly changed. You can now go, and again, this is hard coded, so we can have kind of multiple renders. So we always assume we are rendering the first one, and it's component ID 1, which is our root component, so we get that out. The root component has an update dump method. We go and call that, and once that's done, we can say try set results for on the render completed, which is up here, the thing we are waiting before we return out of here. And that's it. And then there's a bit of exception. So it's a very bare bones Blazor renderer we have here. Now, it's a bit more interesting if going into, I'll just show you component state first. So component state is the base type for all component states. So we have the list of nodes. We have also list of children. So we can go downwards. You can go to the root and you can go to the parent. And so this is very much what we already did in V2, in the proper V2 branch that we're working on. Other than that, you have some add child and remove child, and then you have the get current render tree frames. Now, if you go to the root components, when that is instantiated, it has a DOM builder because there's some state in there, so we can't, at some point, we want to, in theory, support multiple root components have been rendered from the same renderer, right? And we want to be able to update them independently of each other. So the difference is from a bUnit component state and bUnit root component state is that a bUnit root has a document, which is the same as a browser window, basically, right? And it then has the AngularSharp DOM builder type here that takes a renderer and a navigation manager, because I just wanted to make the code compile. There isn't actually a one in here, but at least it's happy. And then it has the update DOM method that will call DOM builder and build root component DOM. Now, going back here, you might notice that we have the inode list, which is a standard thing from AngularSharp, but it points to nodes, and the nodes is a bUnit component node list. And it's a very simple implementation of an iLoad. It's really just have the entries that you can then get access to. And that is the thing that will exist. This will be the sort of the slice from the I document at the root, and then each component state will have its own bUnit component node list, which will just have a slice of the nodes that belong to that component. And it just needs it at the, so let's see, I have some test component here. I have a root component, which has some text-only component element and an element with children. So if we go into this, for example, you can see in this component, the main element would be in the node list for the component, but the element inside here would not be in the node list because it just needs the root level nodes, right? Because you want to have access to your root level nodes in the node list, and then if the nodes have child nodes, which this main element has, this element also produces an element, just a div class at some level, right? Then that element is inside the main. So the node list for the element with children is a main element and a div element, because those are at the root level, right? So it took a little bit of finicking around to make it work. And it can also be that you can be at, so this is a good example, like you have this main element here, that's at the root level. This is another component, and it would only have what it's inside there. But because it's producing element that is at the root level of this one, the elements that are at the root level in here should also be added to this component's node list. Yes. Okay, so that's basically what we have here. We have this node list. So if you go into the DOM builder, which is now renamed from what it was called before, the HTML writing type, you can see it takes the renderer, the navigation manager, and HTML parser, which is neat. And then it has a new method instead of what was it, write root HTML. I can't remember. We just pass in the root component. Yeah. And we get the current render tree frames for it. We create a new bUnit component node list, and the bUnit component node list has, I guess it should be internal, but it doesn't matter. Again, demo stuff. So when we create a node list, I want to store with the node list what is your parent component to all the nodes here, so I can make sure I add all the nodes. Whenever we add a node, our assertion here is that the parent node, the node of the parent I'm adding, should be the same as my parent. So as it says here, let me put this into the list should only contain nodes at the same level in the DOM tree, right? Because all child nodes would also implicitly be part of the components node list. So that's sort of our assumption here, right? We don't want to have additional ones. We want them all.
And there's also always a parent because at least you have a body tag.
Exactly. The body tag is in. So even if people, yeah, okay. So that's an edge case we want to check. If somebody is actually rendering the app.razor from a Blazor application in bUnit using bUnit for that, it will return the HTML tag and all that stuff. So we might have, I don't know. So that's going to be an edge case we need to deal with. But again, yes, there will always be a body, right? So if you go back here to the renderer, when we go in here and create a new document, we start with an empty document. But as a minimum, it has, the minimum is that it has, HTML and all of that. Now, so where were we? Yeah. So we go and create a new nodes list. We assign the nodes new bUnit component nodes list to the nodes property, and then we just call render frames, and we pass in the parent element and the nodes list. And so if we jump down here, for example, you will see we do a few things. For example, in the text here. So the text is a bit more convoluted now. We still just use the parent. Parent would be, instead of calling, I renamed it from output to parent because it's essentially the parent element we want to add something to. So we take the parent, we take the owner and create text node. And what I've added here is I'm using the HTML encoder that Blazor actually also does before it passes in content, so that if we have any special characters, they can actually get encoded. I'm not sure if AngleSharp does it, so I just added it back in to be sure. So we get a node out, and obviously we add that node to the parent. But here we also do say, well, if our parent is the same as our components nodes, as our node list's parent, then we also add the created text node to the nodes list. And then obviously this is just standard stuff. Same here, pass fragment, markup, nodes, add to, and here's, should we actually add these to the components nodes? So it's just a boolean, so we don't have to do it every time in the loop here. And then we go through each of them, add the child to the parent, and then we also add it in here. I think there were some edge cases where this doesn't necessarily always hold true if you have nested elements inside a same component. So there were some edge cases. But besides that, this is more or less the same code as we had before. There's one small change, and that's up here in the build component DOM, where this is essentially getting called when we want to render a child component of the root component. So that's this method gets called. So we go and get the component state for that child component. We get the frames. We create a new list for that specific component and assign that. And then we go and render frames, which will render all the way down to the, fullest. And after we're done with that, we go through each of the nodes in this component's node list and check if the parent from the parent component nodes, if that parent is the same as the node parent, we add it in here as well. So to deal with that example we had before, where the element coming from the DOM elements coming from this element component should actually also be part of this component's node list. Now, to prove that things kind of work, I've done a few things. Like we can step through this test first. And build started. Come on. Still waiting for, I don't know if you can even see that on your side.
Yeah, it's small, but it's visible. It's visible.
Come
The
on,
oven
shouldn't
has to
take
heat
that
up.
long. Yeah. Cranking the wheel here. Now, the bUnit context, by the way, it's just for V2 here. It basically just news up some services and the bUnit render, which we looked at before. So it's very bare bones. The only thing it does is that it has this render async method that, yeah, a small helper method, basically. But it's just calling the new renderer. We should go ahead and render our doc. I'm going to skip out of that and come back here. F5. So now we have our component under test, which is, zoom it. Let's boot that up. So the component under test here is, this is returning the bUnit root component. So let's expand this. Trying my best. Let's go down here instead. So I hope zoom right. So you can see it has all the things here, and it is the, yeah, it's the root component we have returned out, represents that. Now, so if we can go to cut and say document, because the root component has document, we get the body, and then we can say, give me all the child node, and then we can say prettify. So we just step over there and do this, and that is not super zoomed in, but I can sort that out. You can see it does that. It creates root, text only at level 1. Then we have a div class. We have the main element with another element inside it. So all of this, and you can even see it sort of saved the, I have an element here with weird case.
Can you move it a bit to the right? It's not completely in.
Yeah, okay. That's the thing when I zoom. Is this better?
I guess this is good. This is good enough to see.
Yeah,
I have it on a 4K screen.
Yeah.
That's good. That is.
Okay, what we can actually even do is we can go and have a look at root.razor here.
Yes, I thought you could just copy paste the VS Code and just
yeah.
But that's way better.
So you can. So I don't know if I can zoom in here. Probably can't. What I can do is I can do this, and I can do.
Put it in a new file and put them side to side.
Example the root output.html. There we go. And put this side to side. Here we go. So go away. So there's one thing that is a bit weird, and it just adds. So you can see text only. If you go into that, it has text only at level. So.
But is that even correct from an HTML point of view?
I think it's
because
still
it's not
correct.
An element.
Yeah, it's not an
white
element.
It's not trimmed.
Yeah, so this seems to be what Blazor is doing. So yeah, I think it's correct. At least it's yeah. So that's two. If you look at the Go ahead, sorry.
It's only if you do something like CSS preserve white space and word wraps, only then it happens. And I think this is correct.
I think so too. The thing is, the reason why it's not being shown as new lines is because it's only /n/n. If I look when we look at the point in the DOM tree builder where it gets to this part, it's literally just /n/n. So I think for Visual Studio and Windows to show correctly, it would be /n/r/n/r or r/n or whatever. Something like that.
So for Unix folks, it might really be a new line now.
Yeah, exactly. Anywho, you can see we have a div element and we have something like that. And actually, another thing we could do is we can go to my watch window and I can say cut.body. I can actually just do cut. document.toHTML, and I can show you, this is the part. I can put it back in here. Oh, it formatted it for me. So here it actually looks a bit more like you would expect. So we have HTML head, body, and then you have the end of it. So this would be the raw markup. Oh, there's still a word wrap going on somewhere. This would be the raw markup that our components actually produced. And here it looks right. Root dots, and then you have a new line, and then you have this, then you have element. And you can see the indentions are a bit weird. Like the main element is all the way over here because, but then again, that's actually, I think, similar to what was, this is the same as what the render we have built does, right? It does not pretty print your HTML for it because you don't need to have it pretty printed when you are just generating markup and putting it into the browser, right? So this is the non-pretty printed
version. Is this
version.
intentionally broken?
No, I think it's just.
Wait. No, sorry. I saw the main on line 14 on the right, and I was like, why is there closing main? No, it's not.
Yeah, so this main
line
is
14, it looked really, it looked so weird.
Yeah, it's because it's, so it's just the way the raw render tree we get when we are looping through that. This is what it actually looks like. So you can see that we can step through it if you want to have a deeper look, but it's basically the Blazor compiler, when it turns a Razor file into markup, it will keep some white space, but it also trim other parts. So that's why you have something that looks quite ugly, right? But that would be, funny enough, that would be the same raw markup more or less that we get from bUnit, right? So this is not too different. Now, so what we did was we went to documents.body.toHTML. And actually, what we want to do is we want to not say body because we don't want the body tag in there. We want to have child nodes, and we want to do toHTML on those. And we can copy this and put that in here. And oh, I didn't manage to copy it apparently. Let's try that again. Here we go. So this looks more like when we look over here, we can sort of squint and see the same thing. We have an element, which is this guy, level 1 element. Then we have element with children. That's a main element with child level 1. So then you have a child element level 2. And then you have element level 2 apparently as well here. Then we have some root text. Then we have our weird cased p tag. And let's see, word wrap. Just do it. Don't. Anyway, no, I don't. Yeah. So that's a new line here. Anyway, you can sort of see the link that is down here that gets matched directly. Like here, Blazor has decided to say, well, this white space, I'm just gonna throw that away because it's inside the same component. So Blazor does this for us when it passes through stuff. Then again, we have an element with children that starts here. No, it starts here. This is basically what comes out of this guy here. So we're kind of doing the right thing. Let me just keep that around, go back to the unit test. Now, interestingly enough, if we step over here and go into each of the children, and you can see we have 4 children. We have a text only, we have element with children, element with children. Are they actually though in the right order here? Now yeah, text only, element with children. Yeah, that was actually right. Let me zoom in. Come on. Nope. Ah, damn it. Okay. As soon as I hit the button, but we can see you go in here and I can zoom in on these down here. You can see component ID 1, 2, 3, 4, text only, element, and then the 2 child elements. So if we go and pull out one of the child nodes, we can see that this one, the first one, and let me go to child. Here we go. We can expand that and we can see. So now this is our The first child is the text only element. If we go in here and expand out the text nodes, and this is actually cheating a bit. So it seems like the same thing as that twice, but because that's the wrong thing I've pinned. So I want to go in here and I want to say I only want to see the is it text content perhaps? Yes. So let me zoom in and let me maybe do something like this. So I'm gonna zoom in here. Can you still see everything on the screen?
Yeah, I just said hello back. But yes, that works quite well.
Yeah. So here we are in the node list for the component one node, which was the text only element. And you can see its nodes contain the text content of text only at level. And then you have another text node. So this is two text nodes that are inside here. And that matches what we have here. So this becomes a text node, and then this becomes a text
parameters.
node. Yes, because what happens if we go down to here, we basically hit this twice. First for the first part, and then it comes back here, and then there's another text element, which is then so we create two nodes because that's what the render has produced for us, right? So I guess in theory, what you could do is you could angle sharp. It wouldn't make a difference if angle sharp combined those or turn those into a single node, right? Because that's just two adjacent text nodes. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to have them individually.
Doesn't hurt in this moment.
No, it doesn't hurt either, and there might even be some advantages to it because whenever we see something like this, it means that there is some text interpolation going on, right? In here, right? There's something getting merged into it. It's just not a straight text string. So, and you can sort of see we can step through. I think this is the next one. This is another text element. We can get to, I think this is a bit more interesting. It's an element with children. So if we have a look at this child and its nodes list, you will see we have let me try to make this hole less large. Zoom in for you guys. I'm trying to keep it in the middle of my screen share here. So you will see we have the HTML semantic element, which is the main element. Then we have a little bit of text content, which is just a text node.
What you said, the new character.
New line, yeah. And then we have the HTML div element. And the div element itself, if I just expand that and look at its, so it doesn't want to show me the nodes list, but that would also contain children. So there's no children inside that div element, but there's some text content, which is shown here. So, excuse me, it has everything. Now, the interesting part is that you can see here, if we go one step deeper, I'm just going to step through that. So here, basically, I'm going to go into finding children 2. So if we go to root, that would be 0, 1, 2. So we find this element.
Wouldn't it be element level 1? Because you also have root. Can you go back?
So this is my root.
In your can you go back into your component?
Root.
So we also have root. Isn't root dot itself the first child?
Yes.
Given that, shouldn't be element level 1 your children 2?
Okay. Let's see. So I have 4 here. I have text node, I have element, and then I have element with children. So I think text node contains
your root.
Because so now we're not. This is children as in cut, then children. This is counting this is counting not elements, but this is counting components. This is text only component, element, child node. So what you're thinking about, this would be, this is not the DOM elements. This is components. I'm talking. So children refers to components, child components. So
Okay.
so the second component here would be the first children with element. Now then we can go in here again and find its children, and it has two elements inside it, elements 5 and 6. So we just take the first element. Then we can go into its nodes list, and it just have a div. We go and find the last child of that, which is a text element. I'm sorry, I can't zoom in all the way, but basically it finds the text. Again, if we go, let me just step through. So we go in here, then we say, then we take this one, and now we come in here. So we have an element, this is div element, and then we want to find the first child, and there's actually 3 child elements. There's the text, and then there's this is a text node, this is text node because it's interpolated, and then there's a text node here, right? So what we're essentially doing is we're going and finding the last child, which is the thing called element, and I'm just updating that with hello world.
No.
So the fun thing is now if we step over and then go to our body, the top layer again, to the root element, and say just prettify, actually we can just do this, prettify this one. And again, if we go and copy paste this and put it into, where did my HTML file go? There you go. Oh, it's over here, it's just collapsed. That's why I can't see it. You can see now we've replaced, so this was my sort of very simple way of proving to myself that when I go and change a node that is nested deep in a node list of 3 levels down the component tree, and I find the nodes list there, and I update some data about an element in the DOM tree, text content, and write hello world on it. If I then go into my root component and look at the nodes there and say print out whatever you have in a pretty way, HTML wise, the change I made to the last child DOM node down here was also reflected because it is the same node. So it's sort of proving to myself that the whole copying around nodes and having them, not copying them, but having multiple references in multiple places works, which is honestly to be expected because this is, HTML, right? So that was sort of one experimental test. There's not really assertions going on here. It's just for fun. Now, one thing I did was I wanted to, I don't know why I call it ad hoc. I could also call it V1 versus V2 prototype. So here we have the V1 bUnit. We have the prototype bUnit context V2. Basically render the exact same thing. We call prettify on both ends, and then we use the stringly assertion here. And this test, well, it's going to be embarrassing if it fails now, but it passed earlier today, so I'm going to stick with that. I had to do ignore case because you remember that if you go to root, this one in V1 we actually bUnit normalizes. Lowercased it and in V2. So what we could also do is we could do, let's see if, actually, let's fire up code and do, because it has quite good comparison. So if I just step through this, put a breakpoint here. So I want to show you the difference, not with prettify on, but just with, so that would be cuts v1 dot nodes dot, actually we have markup here, so we can just pull the markup out. So I'm gonna pull that into here, and then we have cut v2 dot nodes.toHTML. And let's put that in here, and new file, and
Interesting. If
and
VS
then
Code
do
understands also that you have different line endings. No, it does not.
yeah, yes. So wait a minute, which one was which? Oh, this is the old version, and this is V1 and this is V2. So
How about the markup? It's still
yeah,
the CASED is still uppercase.
yes, because that's the raw markup before we take it into Angle Sharp. So yes, Angle Sharp will. I don't know if so. There's definitely some things here where it's a bit more pretty, but then still you have the main hanging over here to the end, like we have up here. So, but the bUnit renderer from just the raw output text renderer does keep a bit more white space around. Like this is the same down here. This is the same. Actually, down to here is the same as far as I can tell. Yes.
Yeah.
Let me
Can you split them
zoom.
out?
Yeah. Let me zoom in a bit more. So yeah, down to here it's the same. But then we have the paragraph element, like the
It also works. Just the anchor is then
yeah
different.
the anchor seems to have lost the intention here. That's
But
a
I
little
would
bit of
also be
wise.
interested. Can you go back to your Visual Studio? Because I
Yes,
guess one of the differences that you can see it there pretty nice. No, it's like maybe there's some carriage return new line stuff is going on, and that's why it looks just different.
if
But
we do
maybe they're even the
raw
same.
v1.nodes dot oh no cut v1 dot nodes
Then
dot
note.
to HTML.
Uh-huh.
So if we take that instead and put that in here, so that
Okay.
lowercase is this, but otherwise it's so that there's a few
Okay.
line breaks that
Okay.
got lost in
Yeah.
translation here, but other than that, it's close enough, and
And more important, semantically the same.
exactly that is the important thing. And even if we go and prettify it, then it becomes the same. Besides the uppercase, lowercase stuff, so I am tempted to call this a fairly big success. So we attempted. I think we managed to do 2 out of the 3 things we wanted. We have a single shared document. We are well. What was the 3 things? Shared documents, nodes.
You can go to your parent. That was one of the things. So
Yeah, go
what
to
we
parent.
cannot.
Oh yeah. Oh no. So actually, we just achieved 1 out of 3 things because there was 3 things. That was a single set of document nodes split out. So that was one thing. Then there was going from nodes to component. Well,
Exactly. This will not work.
so there's definitely some options for doing that. Like we could. I guess you could, in theory, you could have an extension method, and then you can maybe at the root you would have some sort of dictionary, and all the DOM nodes are in a dictionary as a key, and then it just points to the ID, right? Or so there's a few different ways of going about that. You could also have we could also in theory add, if we go into the builder here, whenever we start. Whenever we go and add build component DOM of the root, yeah, that would be here. Build component.
Yeah.
We could add a comment node or something else that sort of marks. So if you go in the DOM tree and find an element, you just walk up the tree until you find a special element like our comment node, right? And that would have the ID of the. So in theory, you could do something.
But yeah, for the other one, the third one is basically you call find from a root level and you call find from a child level. Those should be the same node elements. Like literally, the reference should be the same.
Yeah,
That's the third one.
Yeah, you kind of want to be able to do find component from node. So if I do
Do we have some unique elements in here? That doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah, but we could just say, okay, so I would do cut v2.nodes.query selector. Well, I can just do query selector all and say, give me all the
foo
div
bars.
elements. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. So we have all the div elements. And if I go and say, so the root doesn't have any div elements, but like if we go and so just say the first one, if I just say div element 0, I want to say get components.
Do we have to
get components, and that should return my and it probably needs to be, well, right now it doesn't need to be generic because there's no generics here, but we would have some extension like that. And that would, yeah. So I think the key is we need a way to store that. We need to assign to each and every single, well, at least element, maybe not to nodes, but at least to elements. So elements are the things you can't find. You can't find text nodes when you do the query select all. You can step into you can navigate through the nodes list and find text nodes, but you can't use query select all. But the thing is, though, you can't. What you can do is you can go to you can have components like the text only component here that actually just produces text nodes. So you need to be able to go from a text node. So it has to be on all nodes basically. And you can go say, give me the component that created this element. So to be able to do that, yeah, I am open for suggestions. Like the simple thing is just to have for every node that is created during the builder, we have a dictionary. And because we know at the point where the node is being created, we know what the component ID is. So as long as we have the component ID, we can get everything else out, right? So that would be one option. Yeah, I don't know if you have. I don't know. It will work, and I can probably code it up in 5 minutes. But it seems a bit ugly to have a full dictionary with nodes. I don't know if there's better ways of doing it. Maybe I'm just being too cautious about not wanting to allocate and memory stuff and all of that. But then again, so it would be a single dictionary for the root, which we would fill up with keys and values.
And those keys exist anyway. Those values also exist. It's not like they
values
don't
are
exist.
just integers.
All nodes will exist.
Yeah.
Or integers. You can even use the node list. It doesn't matter. It's the same.
So actually, there's one thing I wanna, for this to work, does require, and I do believe angle sharp actually overrides, which is a bit annoying if I remember correctly. Angle sharp. Let me just double check. Angle sharp. Let's just go to code editor. I think angle sharp overrides equals and get hash code, and that would be problematic. Let's see. Let's just find one. It's under HTML. It's typical the HTML. DOM. Let me find the actual implementation, please. Internal. Here we go. So let's just do HTML div element. It inherits from HTML element. There you are. Let's see if we have anything that overrides. Let me zoom in again. Lots of. Is there?
You can just directly look for equals, huh?
Yeah. I was just equals
Oh.
get hash code. He did do
Is
that at
this
some point.
also, can you go to the top again? Is HTML element also inheriting from something else?
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Does go to definition here? Oh, yeah, it actually
Oh, that
does.
works. Ooh.
Element, abstract class. Okay. Wait, do you also give me an outline then of my document? Yes, you do. So what are we looking for?
I saw an equals. I saw an equals.
These are
Yeah.
equals. So public override
Well, but
equals.
that's not the object equals.
No. And I guess if you have a dictionary, you can create your own comparer.
Comparer.
So you can control, because the hash code equals doesn't matter, but hash code does
Both
matter.
matters.
Yes.
No, both matters.
Yeah. Both matters, but in terms of dictionaries, I think it only uses hash code, right?
No, both. Hash code is the quick one. If two hash codes are the same, those two elements probably are the same. It's just the opposite. Like if two hash codes are not the same, it's for sure they're not the same.
But when you insert a key into a dictionary, does it actually call get equals, or does it call just get hash code? And if it gets a unique one, it doesn't care about equals. But yeah, let's see these methods. I don't see
also,
any.
Where are you at? It also, by the way, just that you know, it also inherits from Node. So that might be even, you have to go even one.
Yeah, okay. Well, control click. Fingers crossed.
I hope that event target. There's equals. There's equals. Yeah.
Equals is overwritten here. It's virtual though.
Yeah, but there's still this other equals. It's not the object equals.
Yeah. Get hash code.
Oh, that's just hash code.
Okay.
What is other node? Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, that's fine. That maybe we don't. Yeah, but as you said, you can just provide your own way of comparing items.
Yeah. So what we could do here is we could have a public dictionary of inode to int.
Integer.
Yeah. That would be node to component map.
To component. Or I like that.
Yeah. Oh, probably uppercases. I just doing a property for now. Christopher says last level is event target's last level, luckily. Yeah. Well, secrets. So
we'll never see that. For our own sanity, we will never see.
I'm just gonna do.
Sorry,
it's gonna be fine. Okay, so whenever, okay, let me just think here. At what point do we actually insert? I guess after here, all the okay, so we have to be careful because we can't just take all the elements in the nodes list, because there might be elements in the node list that actually doesn't belong to that component explicitly. It might be created by a child component, as we have.
Immediate first level elements.
Yeah. So this particular this content in here would also be part of the, because it is at the root level. So we want it to be in the nodes list, but it isn't created by that component. So I think it's probably down here in render call. So here we create a node, and then it's going to be.
Well, your text is a bit more like element, line 105. Wait, this is interesting.
Sorry, say that again.
Oh, also, no, sorry. There are multiple anchor points where you have to add this stuff. Yeah. Continue. I'm
am
even not sure
just
right now, before you continue, is this something we can really do? If I see 117, if you have arbitrary markup, this arbitrary
100%.
markup in itself, yeah, exactly. So you pass with them render fragments, for example. Those render fragments can be other components as well, and we have no way of
No,
telling more.
no. I'm fairly certain that all. So you have to remember, this is render core. Right, a render core is passed in frames that belongs to a component ID. So anything in this markup is only, otherwise it would be split up into multiple.
Okay, so if I do have a render fragment, which I define somewhere, which has a different component inside, for this component, we will be in its own render core. What was it? Render the core.
Yes, exactly. So everything that is in the render tree frames that we have here, they belong to this component ID. So when we do parse, even though we might have, a lot of markup here and markup content, all the nodes here would belong to
That component with the component ID.
to that component with that component ID. Yes, obviously here we get a single node out, so that's easy. Here we get an actually, well, it might not be as easy as such. Well, yeah, okay, so this is text node, so it would always just be a single node, and there wouldn't be any children. But here we get nodes out, which might themselves have children, so we would need to sort of unwrap all of that to get to, because each and every one, we would have to flatten the node tree and add all of them into the dictionary, pointing at the same, pointing towards the same component ID. Yes. So in theory, that would happen. Now, I am tempted just to make it a quick and dirty here. Just say private. Actually, let's do this. Let's instead of having this, we pass in this guy here and assign it to a field.
And now you have the dictionary.
Yes, and if I go back to my root something here, we can just say this here, because then I don't have to do that. That was also sort of double dispatch with one pointing to the other. So instead we just pass it in here. It now lives in here, root component state. And root component state, all that is still good. Yep. So in theory, if we go down here, we should be able to say root component state dot node map. And then you should do an add, and that would be node to component ID. And here, node dot, is there a, give me all the nodes.
No, I guess you have to write this recursively for yourself. It's a tree.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Oh, what is
actually,
unwrap? Oh, there was an unwrap function? What does it do?
It's part of angle sharp. Oh.
No, it's from you. And it probably does even what you want.
Maybe, let's see. No. This is, I think it's the thing that unwraps
But
our.
that looks. Well, so you have to.
It's for our element wrapper. That's a different thing. It's yeah. It's for when we.
But we need something like that. I mean, the code wasn't that bad, to be honest, because you just that's what you need at the end.
Yeah, I guess you basically need a for.
You need a while.
Yeah, but I probably need, because I'm capturing the node here, then I append it, and so we probably want here, we want to say node dot no, that would be root component state, node component map, add. I'm gonna add my nodes to the component ID, and
Now you want to go through the children, the children of the children.
All child content, yes. So I guess I'm just thinking here, what we could get away with would be that when we want to go look up, if we hold 1 second there and go back to our test, we have the we probably want an public static class node bUnit node extensions. Yes. And we want our public static bUnit component base, component state, gets component, and that would be this inode node. So to be able to do, how do I get to my I need to have a reference in my document somehow.
I'm not sure if I follow. What do you want
to so I just have a node and I can do owner. That will give me the document, but yeah. I probably want context, no, owner context, then I can get, which is a browsing context. And yeah, I'm wondering if there's a way to add something in here. So if it was in the browser with dynamic things, you could just add another property to your the built-in thing, right?
You can make it an expander object. I also do that in C#.
Yeah. So I guess that should be. So that's the whole services things. So there might be some option in here, but where you can go from yeah, I guess maybe if we assume that we have bUnit renderer in here, right? And let's see, I'm just gonna hack something together. We can always make it pretty afterwards. So we have our document. So document dot set maybe attribute, create attribute. What does that do? No, I don't want to create. I want a context. Can I go to? I can just go to document. There's an element head. I don't know. I want to maybe find the HTML element. Well, fuck it. We can just put it on body, right? Put it on body. We say set attribute, and then we just set bUnit component ID, and we pass in component ID. And then if we go back to bUnit renderer, where we create our config here, so we have a default config and we say with this, but we can also say dot with bUnit renderer, and that would be this. I guess we have to do something like this. So now I can here, so I can get my bUnit renderer, right? So we have the renderer. From the renderer, we can say, again, we can do node.owner, node.owner.body.get attribute. That was bUnit.component ID, right? And that would return me a string. So I want to say var root component ID, and that would be int.parse. That shouldn't be a problem for it. And now I have my renderer, so I can say get root component state, root component ID. It's easy. Where are we getting? Now I will be able to say root component state. And I can say root component state, and I can say map. We can basically do something like, well, root component state dot map try get value. If we don't find one, we go to the node's parent, because so I guess my and once we have a component ID, we can say return renderer dot get component state with the component ID. What seems to be the problem? Component ID doesn't exist. So try get value. If it doesn't find one, we go up the tree. So I think my idea is here, instead of adding all children of children, we know that this node here and all its children will be created by this component. So if I am in a component that is further down and it doesn't exist in the dictionary, I just go up to the parent and see if it exists in the dictionary until I find one that does. And then I can return the one, right? So I don't need to, scroll down through the nestings. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I understand where you're driving it.
I think so.
I'm thinking of edge cases where it is ambiguous, but I guess it's not.
I think in this particular case, the assumption is that all the markup in this frame belong to the same component. So even if you have markup that contains nested elements or nodes, then we just need the top level nodes to be added to the map.
Yeah.
And in any child node, if it doesn't exist in the map, we just go up to the parent and say, do you exist in the map, until we get there. So, but there's something wrong with this logic here. Hang on, just gotta. Okay, never mind. That was just wife threatening to come home from work. And exclamation mark there. Now, oh, and here we go. Exclamation marks all the way down. Yeah. So root component state, try get value.
You might also want to check if node is now null if you do this approach. If you pass in, and I mean that's not probably making
it's assumed
nice.
it's not null. Yeah. So let's see here. So
not only that, but if you cannot find this, like you put in a node from a different root, bUnit root component render component state, that was straight wrong. If you have, you can pass in nodes which are not null but are not part of your render tree without any problem. And then you have an indefinite cycle there. Or no, you have another reference exception on line 68.
So do we say do?
No, just check. Oh, like that. Like just check if node is null at some point.
If Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. So if I have one, I just return. If I find the value that matches, then I return. Otherwise, I say nodes
Exactly. You
parent,
do
and then I
this.
say while nodes
Node is not null.
is not null. Yeah. Okay. And we probably want to say var, well, node question mark, I node question mark, candidate, node equals node, and then what are we searching for? We're searching for the candidate. Otherwise, we go candidate, candidate.
Yeah, maybe
And
that's a bit better.
I am mixing squirrely.
And then also on line 74, you want to have a candidate.
Return no. Line 74 candidate.
In the while. No, what done? What done?
Oh
While
yeah, you're right.
candidate is not null.
Yeah. Absolutely, you're right. All right, look at us. So in theory, well, let's see if it builds. I might have to check out a little bit earlier than normal. I have to drive my wife somewhere
That's
in.
good because I also it's getting late here as well.
Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't build. Let's fix that real quick.
Two string.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wants to have a
Well,
string
we
as
can
well.
do that. Fair enough.
And what was the second issue? Yeah, we know.
It was the same one.
Oh, that was only that.
Yeah, it was only that. Okay, so actually, if we jump back in here and do this thing, step over, render, we get in here. We have our document body, and
Which
we
component
have
ID we have?
0.
Is
It's
it the
always
root?
0.
Is it the root?
Yeah, it's the root component. Yeah, and
Yeah, damn it.
so you can go have a look here. We can actually look at the. You can see it has added the body bUnit component ID attribute, so everything is right there. Oh shit! Sorry for cursing, but I accidentally just hit a 5 instead of. Well, we can do assert not null owning component ID.
Wait, did we always set the?
We set it for the root
confused now.
component.
Should we set it for the real component? I mean, yes.
It's just a way
You
for
have-
me to get to here, to be able to figure out what is the component that. So we just step over there. So now we're down here. We have, let's see, how many elements do we have? We have 5 div elements. Now, if I go in here and say, give me the owning component. So let's see, do we get a renderer out here? We did get the bUnit renderer out. That's not null, yes. Then we can say node, owner, body, get attribute. Let me just.
Probably that should be now 0. That
should.
You want to go be really, really sure, huh?
Yes, it returned 0. Yes, so it found something. So now we have our 0. Then we can go and say, give me the root component state, which we now have. And then we say candidate div, and we can go in here. And how many things do we have? We have 31 elements in the map. Yep, it's a lot for such a little thing.
But there's something like this level added that's 3 already.
Okay,
so
yeah. So it didn't find the specific one there. So we go one up to the parent, and that is not null. Oh, hang on. Did we forget to add the parent as well, body? So yeah, we did. So let's go back here. So no, actually go boom, boom, boom. Where are we? We are here. So obviously we need to add node component map dot add, and we want to add document dot body with component ID. Otherwise, it's not going to find itself. I think for the test, why is the icon all wrong here? Well, anyway, for the test, maybe I should take, I don't know, number 3 instead. See, that's a bit more interesting.
What is number 3 now is the question. Maybe you should,
yeah,
before we should go through, maybe. ourselves just to know what do we want. But we can just check, the whole. Can you show the markup again? I mean, we can just see where it comes
I can
from, and then just check what is our expectation. I guess you have
so
to use cut v2
yeah.
because I
So
have
the
absolutely no clue what
the third one is element 2. Is element 2 in it's level 2
So this
element.
is the element with children level 2. So can you go to root again on line 51 inside the root components? So just that we have a common understanding.
Line 51?
51. Yeah, the root. Just your component, your Blazor component.
Oh,
that's why in render async you have root. I just want to go into root so that we both have an understanding which component do we want to see.
Oh, you mean this one?
Yeah, exactly. So this is, we are sure we want to see element with children.
Yes,
I guess,
so this would
that's what we want to see.
this is the third div element. So
exactly, and I just want to make sure with you that we are aligned. What element, which Blazor component are we expecting?
So it's not gonna be this one. It's going to be not gonna be.
It's gonna be this one, and it comes
level
from line
2.
8.
I think it's level 2 here. Yes, element level 2. It's probably gonna be that one. Yes.
Good. So we expect element with children as owning component.
Yeah. No, I think we expect element actually. So let's see. So
oh yeah, you're right.
This is
you're right.
div.
You're right.
No, wait a minute. I probably wasn't right. Okay. So wait, what did we end
we're in.
We ended up with body, which is not right. Definitely not right. I think. Well, we found something, but I don't think it was the right one. So okay, so let's do something. Let's create a special component .razor. Let me just add.
Thank you. Yeah, that's better, I guess. And there you just add something like nav or something unique.
Yeah. So we have a div element here, and inside that we have our, I don't know.
Make it nav. That's unique. You don't have whatever.
Address.
It doesn't matter. Something we don't have.
Ooh. Okay. Yes. And I will go into that and add, I don't know, doesn't matter, I guess. So that would be special components. Let's add it here. And then we go back here and we say we want to find our, what was it I picked?
Address.
Address.
And we want to
that should be query selector.
Yeah, like that.
So ADDR, and we want to do this. Okay. Step out. Oh, no, I hit the wrong. Damn it. Sorry. Let me try that again. Debug last run. Step over. Okay. So we have the address element. And let's step into here. All of that works fine. We get our component 0, which is our root component. Our candidate is our address. So I don't expect this to be in here. If we have a look at the map. Well, that's not very helpful.
Should we see a semantic content somewhere? So if you just scroll down, we should see the.
Yeah, it's trying to be helpful because I've pinned. No. It's if we remove that, we just do node type and add those two instead. So you can see here in the list we have a bunch of text nodes. Then we have an anchor element. We have an p tag. Then we have
that comes later.
Yeah. So I don't expect it to be there. So if you go in here,
yeah, that's too deep.
This is the element, yeah. But yeah, it would be this one.
We would only show the div, yes.
Yeah. So first one, the next one is a candidate is now a div element. That should be in there, and it is in there, and it finds 4. We get out here, and now we have owning component, which is component ID 4, which is special component. So yeah, this works-ish. There's probably some holes in the cheese, but I think overall it kind of works. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I think the reason why the other one didn't work was because we're only doing it here, but with this node. But there's other places where we're creating nodes, and that would in particular be over here. So
Yeah.
we forgot in here. So when we're creating, and we want to say, yeah, Copilot was helpful there. So we want to add it to this list as well, so this element. So it's in the list now. So I believe that might be, I don't know, a few other places, but I think that might be it. So now we're able to share a DOM tree. We're able to go from the DOM tree to the component tree. So the last part, I think, is, what was that again? That was, patching the DOM tree instead of replacing it entirely. And I did have a quick look at some algorithms around that. I think it should be doable.
Wait, just to be complete, that was not the last one. So then we have 4, because one was, you basically grab a button from the root component or from the component itself, and they should be the same reference. That's also something we said we want to achieve. And I guess that was not in the list until now.
Okay, say that again.
Just imagine you say you have what you have this element. How did we call it? Element with special element? The address thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you call cut.find address, and then you say cut.find component special dot find address. They should be the same reference. Those 2 elements should be absolutely the same.
Yes. So that is solved.
Exactly. That's why I said we missed that. And it's solved.
But
that's the second thing out of 4.
So when I claimed half an hour ago that we've solved 2 out of 3 things, I meant 2 out of 4 things, and that was the 2 out of
exactly.
So that
because
was shared DOM tree.
1 out of 3.
Yeah, because I think so. Implicitly, the shared DOM tree also implies that the elements are going to be the same between different.
I just wanted to.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, good.
How good you are! I just wanted to praise you, but if you don't want to have my appraisal.
Yes. No. I'm all good. I can certainly carry it on my very broad shoulders. They are very used to praise. No, I can. Anyway, I think
the machine works.
Yeah. So I think with some caveats in terms of the generated markup not being, because I think we lose a little bit when we ask AngleSharp to parse some things, use the parser to build up the DOM trees directly instead of having the raw markup first. There might be some things where AngleSharp removes, like we saw the raw markup was a bit, there was some white space that was getting discarded, right? And there might be some handles we can pull in the AngleSharp parser to get that to be kept, but I'm not sure. But I also think, for the most part, people don't care. So if we do it like this for V2, where we don't generate the raw markup and then generate AngleSharp from that, but we instead say if people want raw markup, we just call node.prettify, and they get a pretty printed version, right? I think that's probably going to be.
It's a good middle ground, I do think.
It's going to be correct. It's going to be correct enough, right? So yeah.
Yes.
So I think
because even nowadays it wouldn't work as expected.
No, well, yeah.
What if if you have really, I wouldn't call it mail forms HTML in your Blazor components, but I guess you can run into the situation even today in
well, today absolutely, but yeah, so the positive thing would be in today you would just generate the raw string, which would be contain all the legal stuff, and then if you try to go and search through that using the nodes collection, it will probably, AngleSharp will probably tell you to to try again later. You would get some exception probably, or it would just not make sense, the nodes that were in there. So in that case, yeah, there might be some weird elements where you have half of a DOM element in one component that wouldn't work if you're just testing that component in isolation. So there would be some edge cases, but I think this is a good approach going forward, and it does solve potentially a whole bunch of problems for us. So I will. This is just a private repo I have on GitHub. I can share that with you if you want to kick it around. Otherwise,
I
let's
muted
call. Let's.
myself talking.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. So before we storm off and release everybody, every hostage we took over here, are we seeing each other next week? Do we want to keep up a streak? I mean, keep up a streak is maybe a bit. No, that's not true. Create a streak, because it would be the second time in a row.
Oh, I
Along this
definitely
line.
do think I don't see any plans in my calendar for next Friday, so I think we should be
Nice.
back next Friday,
Awesome.
same time, same place, or places.
I do like.
I guess LinkedIn. You can follow us through Steven's LinkedIn profile or my YouTube and Twitch
And
channels. Or whatever it's called, yeah, come hang out. So yeah, okay, let's aim for next Friday, same place, same time, and yeah, thanks everybody for coding with us, and have a good weekend.
Have a lovely day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.